All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is a great pleasure to arise and come forward to that smattering of recorded applause. Now, I'm happy that Albert is here today. This is our crew for a Wednesday.
Albert, thank you.
And Kim is here at her post.
Kim, how are you?
Having just rescued her son from the...
Again with this.
Yeah, well,
What?
I mean, it was a big thing. It was a life and death thing. Kim, I'm surprised you don't want to speak about it all the time. It would be all I would be speaking with if I were you. All I'd be speaking about. All various conversations would lead back to me speaking about having rescued my son from an unforgiving surf that was, well, I mean, about to cheat you out of the great future you're going to have with your young son. So it was a special thing. If you haven't heard that story, I'll tell it another time.
It's not fake. That's real.
Yeah, exactly. Also in our mix today is the newest member of our crew. Yeah. How about it for Matt, everybody? Yeah,
Hey!
Matt is, Matt's on
aboard.
board. He's kind of like when Albert's
What?
not around, he'll be able to step up. I know. We're all very excited, Matt. So welcome.
Thank you.
I am, I'm dealing with a new configuration here in my home base. So we'll deal with that. Some of the things that you hear, some of the things that I've been told we're kind of losing signal at times. So we're dealing with that as it comes. I don't know quite how to deal with it beyond just noting it and then trying to note the configuration and trying to change it. But that's our problem, not yours. Welcome, everyone. I have the great John Rothmann joining us, the scholar, author, presidential historian, and our former colleague from KGO. That's bottom of the hour. As well, we've got Belinda Waymouth with It's the Planet Stupid. She joins on issues about the environment at in the second hour. So I think like 3/4 of the way through the second hour, we will get to that. Look at that. Welcome, Matt. Matt already getting some love from Dan and Kurt. Very, very cool. And Carrie. This is very, very impressive how our crew welcomes newcomers. We have a sort of the opposite policy of the new administration when it comes to newcomers to the country. Yeah. We'll get into a little bit of the policies as expressed by the new administration when it comes to a couple of things. One of which, of course, is immigration. There's a major sea change, perhaps, in how you can achieve citizenship in this country with the Trump gold card. I'll get to that. But also a major budget resolution, and they've made it through the House, which was by no means a simple thing. Remember, this is where the congressional bodies essentially decide on how we'll spend our money as a nation, where the major expenditures will exist. It's the old line, don't tell me your priorities, show me your budget, and I'll tell you your priorities. You can tell a lot by a budget. And Medicare, it would seem, grabbing a little bit of attention as the GOP pulls back from support for that social program. But that said, and I'll get more into this in the next half hour, that said, Trump himself, and of course it is a Trump world, he is the president, and a loyalty oath is required to even serve in his administration. The Trump disposition toward Medicare, because it's gotten a lot of blowback already, the Trump disposition is one of, I'm not sure that I want to defund Medicare in any way. I'm not sure that I want to touch Medicare. So what Trump is doing is he's already endorsed this budget that the House pushed through. Mike Johnson had to engineer and arm twist, and Trump got on the phone, etc. But what Trump is doing, and it's clever, is he's waiting for the Senate to come forward, because you need the Senate to pass on this same budget, and they're not. They've got their own budget, all right? So there'll be a Senate conversation about where the money is spent, and it's in that conversation that he can see Trump a possible pullback from touching this thing that will be so politically unpopular. We'll talk to Rothmann about it when Rothmann comes around bottom of this hour. I got a letter from Newt Gingrich.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I didn't know you two were close.
I didn't either. I'm surprised he's writing to me, given what I've said about him being patient zero when it comes to the polarization of American politics. He is, you can Google it, Newt Gingrich is responsible for the complete obstructionism that the Republican Party has taken toward anything the Democrats try to get through.
Google it.
Yeah. But here it is, the note from Newt Gingrich. And it starts, "My dear friend, I'm writing on behalf of Secure America Now to ask you a question to which I think you already know the answer." Those are my favorite questions, by the way, the ones where I already know the answer. You guys can ask me those anytime. "Who should decide whether or not thousands of illegal immigrants move into your neighborhood? You, in capital letters, as a legal resident of your state, or an open border city, state, or country politician trying to go against the will of the legal citizens of our country?" I think I know what your answer will be, my friend, but I want you to have your say. Thousands of illegal immigrants are making a mad dash for the border right now, racing to get inside the confines of, quote, a sanctuary city in your state before President Trump has the chance to secure our borders. It goes on. And what, and I mean, it's multiple pages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What, I don't know, I want to say Newt wants, but the Secure America Now PAC wants is they want me to send back money.
Mm-hmm.
And I can send along a one-time $28, $50, or $100, and then it goes on, $250, $500, or $1,000 contribution to Secure America Now. By the way, why $28? It went $28, $50, $100, $250. Everything's in 50 increments, except they start at 28. I don't know why. Anyway, God bless you and God bless America. That is from Newt Gingrich.
Well, you go onto their website, the Secure America Now people,
Yeah.
and they have this pop-up that says woke warfare exposes how DEI infiltrated our military. So these are those people.
Yeah. Albert, you see how Kim went and got the website up, even though we hadn't planned it? You could have done that, but you didn't, did you?
Albert, thank you.
All right. The national... This came from the Freedom Center. It was a big day at the mailbox. I like old school mail because I'm old.
Freedom Center, that sounds good.
I mean, who doesn't like it's not only freedom, but it's a center of freedom. I mean, God, that's great. So
I mean, you would think with a name like that they're gonna, try to protect my right to free speech, my right to be a free and fair member of the media, all these great things. No?
Well, it's from the desk of David Horowitz, founder and CEO, and he writes, "Dear fellow conservative."
Oh.
What?
Strike one.
Yeah. Today I'm asking you to complete the enclosed national survey on ending government unions. Please return it to me in the next 48 hours. Wow, there's a theme developing in this country. You've all got 48 hours. I'd be willing to bet you've never heard of Everett Kelly before, he says. He's not a member of Congress. He's not a governor. He doesn't hold elected official office of any kind, and that's the problem. Everett Kelly sits atop the American Federation of Government Employees, he goes on, the largest government union with dues collected from 800,000 workers who are fighting tooth and nail to defend the, quote, crown jewel of the radical left, the deep state. And so they go on with what is essentially, it's a survey. I mean, it's an actual survey with questions. And the questions are like this. Do you believe it's acceptable that only 6% of federal employees show up in person for a full work week? Okay. So you can, just the way the questions are asked. Did you know that in addition to 15 cabinet departments, there are over 2,000 federal agencies? Were you aware that leasing and maintenance costs for federal office buildings cost $15.7 billion a year? And so on. What about the fact that it's nearly impossible to fire a federal employee? These are the questions on part 1 of the National Survey on Ending Government Unions. So I think the striking thing about this, in addition to the fact that it's very arch and very, predictive of the answer they want, is they talk about Everett Kelly, who is head of the American Federation of Government Employees, not a member of Congress, doesn't hold elected office of any kind, and that's the problem. Couldn't you say that about the guy who's going to attend the cabinet meetings today, Elon Musk, not elected, right? Doesn't hold an office of any kind. In fact, when they tried to suggest that he was running the Doge unit that has gone through and sacked American government and government institutions, they, because of legal matters that were pertaining to Musk and his role in the government, they pulled him back from that. And now he says, he's an advisor to the White House. There's actually somebody else running Doge. And we know who she is now. Although it was a complete surprise. She
Probably a
says
surprise to her as well.
Yeah, it was a
She's
surprise
like, really,
to her.
me? She's on vacation in Mexico right now. She's like,
yeah, she was a data analyst, I think. Well, we have it in the show. We can talk about it with Rothmann. But the point is that it's so funny that the hypocrisy is extraordinary.
Speaking of which, you say this letter is from the David Horowitz Freedom Center, and they're on their website. Their whole mission is to fight the efforts of the radical left and its Islamist allies to destroy American values, blah, blah, blah. Islamist allies? You mean like Trump in Saudi Arabia? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Who has Islamist allies? If you're worried about Islamist people, I would just say the liberals are not your target here.
It is. These are just. They're the things that become a rallying cry so quickly, right? Waste, fraud, and abuse, right? Waste, fraud, and abuse. Perfect. They fly that flag and then they just, dismantle government without any regard for waste, fraud, and abuse. They talk about radical Muslim terrorists. I mean, it's sort of like, it's so boilerplate now. You don't hear a lot about communism as much anymore since there is a new disposition,
okay
right,
yeah.
toward
those
toward
communists, they're our
superpowers.
friends. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Randy says, so why was Musk at the cabinet meeting today and not the woman in charge of Doge? Yeah, well, no, Musk, it's bring your billionaire to work day every day at the White House. And that is the way that...
Speaking of Musk, did you see the video? I wish I would have saved it. It's video of Musk a couple of days ago speaking on stage, and he's coming off stage and he's going down the steps of this arena off into the backstage area. And his little boy, who, I don't know, is he 3 or 4, is trying to trail after him, but Musk just ditches the kid. And
Wow.
this little boy is by himself. I mean, there's Secret Service people all around, but he's trying to go down the steps and he's trying to keep up with his dad, and Musk is gone. He left his 3 or 4-year-old son behind.
Yeah. He'll come back and he'll make sure he gets him for the photo op. But I don't think until then he's really required. Wow.
Man.
I didn't see the video. That's wild. This is pretty strange that, and then we'll get into the heavy politics, although we'll give you kind of a broad stroke. Michelle Trachtenberg has passed away. She's only 39 years old. She was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Gossip Girl.
I remember her.
And this is bizarro. The cops responded to a 911 call at her building, and police found her unconscious and unresponsive. Can you speak? She was dealing with some medical issues. Is that what you were saying before we went on?
That's what Albert was saying, that
Somebody
she
was
was
saying
maybe status post liver transplant. Yeah, I remember her as the sister of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know what you, but she was in Gossip Girl. She's been in a lot of different things. 39 years old, so young. Apparently, the listing of her cause of death is natural causes, is what I understand. But yeah, Albert was saying she had some medical issues.
Oh, as Albert was saying it, yeah. You won't see the natural death attached to many 49-year-olds, so that's pretty wild. All right, I like delaying. I want to delay.
Mark, your connection's kind of iffy right now.
We're having some audio issues with you.
What's that?
Your connection is dropping in and out right now.
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit sketchy.
Is it? Okay. That sucks. That sucks.
That doesn't happen very often. I don't know what happened. What's going on?
Maybe just try to rejoin.
I had Anthony Davis. Let me drop out and rejoin. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
you guys
do you think we should?
Yourselves.
We will. We'll take care of it. Don't worry. But we got it. Albert, do you think we should start a chunk of Trump while he's gone?
Sure. I think that's what he was going to queue up there, but then he was his connection was stopping him from getting there. But,
Let's do it. I like it.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
Thompson will be along any moment, but first, let's talk about Apple. And they are trying to fix the iPhone diction bug. They say it's a bug that replaces the word racist with Trump. Now, I have to tell you that, here comes Mark. Go ahead, Mark. We're in the.
Did you do this as a chunk of Trump? I hope so.
Yeah,
we had planned
we
great.
already ran the open.
I
Rock
love
on,
it. Thank
friend.
you. Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to draft with you. Go for it. Yeah,
Okay,
tell me
so
the story.
First, let me set this up and tell you this. When I got my latest iPhone a couple years ago, my daughter, who's more tech savvy than I, thought it would be really funny that every time I have two children, Julia and Jacob, every time I type the word Jacob, the word Julia would appear. Okay. And she figured out how to replace words in my phone and make that happen. And then she said she did it as a joke and forgot about it. And it took me at least 6 months to figure out that you could replace one word with another. Well, someone at Apple has the same issue because in the big program, someone replaced the word racist with Trump. And apparently they say it's called a phonetic overlap, where the problem is appearing with every time you type in the word racist, it flicks over to the word Trump. So as a victim of this scam by my daughter, I understand completely. So now they're trying to fix this bug in the diction tool. They say the glitch was first highlighted in a viral post on TikTok with the speech-to-text tool sometimes briefly flashing up the word Trump when you say the word racist. They say we are aware of an issue with the speech recognition model that powers diction, and we're rolling out a fix. So thanks, Apple.
Wow, that is truly rebellious. Somebody at Apple, right, is, that is just absolutely wild. Meanwhile, President Trump himself announcing that his administration is going to be selling a gold card. It's his version of a green card for those who want residence and citizenship in this country. Quote, we're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million. So like everything's about, he hasn't quite hatched it. This is something he just thought of. And now he's having a press conference about it. And that's going to give you green card privileges, he says. Plus, it's going to be a route to citizenship. And wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card, he said. They'll be wealthy and they'll be successful, he says, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful and has never been done before, he says. Anything like this. Yeah, that's the...
Well, wasn't there some other type of program where you could pay $1 million?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not a new idea.
There is also a...
he sure takes it to another
level. There's
an
existing program with an immigrant investor program, the EB-5 program, and I guess this is going to replace the EB-5 program. I mean, there has always been a criticism of the EB-5 program as actually having some fraud, not just some, a lot of fraud associated with it. But others say, hey, it's a real way to prompt investment and to see to it that people are really here in this country working and a part of the culture and a part of society making a contribution. Whereas this, the $5 million or any other amount, not just the $5 million, but since he suggested $5 million, it's just a way to buy your way in. I mean, he says they're going to employ people, they're going to be great. There's nothing about employing people in this program. It's just to, write a check and get yourself in. So this is one of those things he floats, and we'll have to see actually proceeds. But that's the latest. Meanwhile, the Trump administration creating a registry for immigrants who are in the U.S. illegally, and they want them to register. They are creating a registry for, I'm smiling and chuckling because it seems patently ridiculous to me. All right, but here it is, and then you can tell me how this works in your mind. Creating a registry for all people who are in the United States illegally, and those who don't self-report could face fines or prosecution. Everyone in the U.S. illegally has to register, give fingerprints, and provide the address to the Department of Homeland Security where they are living.
Well, if you're here illegally, isn't this akin to just turning yourself in? Why not just go back home?
Thank you. I mean, the idea somehow that you would show up and register as an illegal immigrant and then be allowed to go back into the general population, if you want to think about that, and be left alone, it's absurd. I mean,
it's just a wild idea, but it just might work.
You're just making the job of deportation that much easier. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service saying on their website that they will soon create a form and a process for registration. It is not clear how many people would come forward and avail themselves of this opportunity to register. But failure to register would be considered a crime. And the administration has said its initial priority target for deportation is people who've committed crimes in the U.S. So by not registering, you are committing a crime. Of course, by being here illegally, you are already considered a criminal and eligible for deportation. So again, I don't see the logic. I don't see the incentive. But as many things that come out of this administration hasn't been super well thought out. And that, my friends, is a chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
for another chunk of Trump.
Albert, I have registered the technical issues with our pal who helps us with this, with such technical matters. He says so far it looks good. Are things okay right now?
Yes, right now, yes. You kind of dropped a little bit, but not majorly like when we told you the last time.
Yeah.
We'll let you know if
Thank you.
quality goes down.
Again, if you're just joining us, we have a slightly new configuration technically. I mean, it's actually a massively, I said slight, but it's a massive new configuration technically, and we just want to make sure that everything goes down well. And so far, it's been so-so. But Elon Musk is everybody's favorite gazillionaire. He is the richest man in the world, and he's bought himself a country, America. I mean, that is, look, pretty hard.
If you're going to buy a country, right? I mean, go big.
Why not go for top shelf? And America is top shelf. But within America, there is pushback. I mean, most people are just watching ESPN and eating Doritos in America, but some people are a little bit rocked by this. Everybody on this platform, for example, watching this show, but now more to the point in Washington. Washington Republicans have moved along and really not uttered a peep. They've played the kind of pretzel logic that they need to justify American foreign policy, pivoting from backing Ukraine, the NATO alliance, our friends in Canada and Mexico, to all of a sudden our new pal, Vladimir Putin, and our new enemies. See that list of countries that I just gave you. Yeah, that's right. Our allies are now our adversaries, and our adversary and enemy is now a dictator in Russia, Vladimir Putin. The GOP has moved along with all of this. But on the Musk stuff, they are beginning to now perhaps push back. The pushback away from Musk is occurring over money that Musk is draining in certain places from programs that may affect their constituency. And he's gotten into some legislative fights with congressional members. But now it would appear that, for example, Tom Tillis, who is the senator, you'll need him in the Senate for this coming budget proposal, is suggesting that the general strategy that Elon Musk is employing should go through Congress. It shouldn't just be done along the lines of the kind of fiat that we're seeing it done with Elon Musk. The recent demand that all federal workers justify their employment is something that has gotten Tillis's attention. And a growing number of GOP lawmakers, as noted here in Politico, urge the tech mogul to show more compassion for the civil servants that he's already culled. As we get more Senate-confirmed leadership in the departments, I think they have to take the reins, said Tom Tillis. They're closer to it. They're more granular. They'll understand and be able to really implement thematically what they're trying to do with Doge. It's a way to politely push back on Elon Musk.
You mean the chainsaw wasn't so sensitive? Oh.
Meanwhile, some GOP members are calling on Musk's Department of Government Efficiency to route its cuts through Congress in a process known as rescission. And even Republicans staunchly supportive of Musk's mission to shrink the government are beginning to acknowledge public pushback to the speed and sweep of Doge's cuts. You think? While Trump has given the world's richest man vast power to reshape the federal government, congressional Republicans are signaling there should be a limit to his authority. That particularly comes into play when he starts meddling in GOP leaders' already complicated legislative agenda, and that's what's happened. He got involved in these fights on spending bills before. He says he wants to wade into spending negotiations ahead of the next government funding deadline. That's March 14th. And these politicians, you know, they are disgusted by this in the main, right? His latest attempt to insert himself into congressional business came Monday when he waded into Mike Johnson's high-stakes negotiations with holdouts on his budget plan for Trump's border security and the energy and tax policies. And a lot of this is done where? On X. You know, he's not even literally part of the negotiations. He just makes these pronouncements on his social media platform. But again, they passed that budget bill, 217 to 215. So whatever was in the secret sauce is there. But the White House is now saying in court papers, because remember, Doge's legitimacy legally is being challenged, and Musk's legitimacy, if you want to think of it that way, because he's attached to Doge. He runs Doge. He created Doge with Trump. That's being attacked. So now I'm talking about legally attacked, that legitimacy. In court papers, they're saying Musk is not Doge's leader, but a senior advisor to the president who has no, this is a quote, actual or formal authority to make government decisions himself. So even as we say that, he is attending a cabinet meeting So it appears that, again, Donald Trump has very clear associations with Trump. He also, Donald Trump with Musk, and Musk is, I'd suggest, he's wagging the dog when it comes to what's happening in government right now. I mean, if you can single-handedly dismantle government, which is what he's doing with his hench people, then you're really running the show. Now, I don't know if you mentioned it, Kim, that the 21 or 22 Doge members of Musk's SEAL Team 6 that's going into all of these different government agencies, they've resigned, right?
The baby tech bros?
Yeah, baby tech bros, they've resigned, yes?
I didn't know.
Yeah. There were 21 or 22 of them, and they have decided they don't want to be part of it. That's
all of them?
Pretty big. Yeah, well, no. There are many more than that.
Okay.
Yeah. We have the sense that it's just a handful, because I think it was just a handful when they first went into the Treasury. But now it's very much the case that there are a lot of them. He has his little army of tech bro wannabes who are in there in government in many different ways. And they are dismantling, make no mistake about it, payment systems and agencies. So, 20, again, I think it's 22 of them pushed back and said, can't do it anymore. We're not good for it. Squeal Team 6, says Ricky O'Bear. Yes, it's Squeal Team 6. Musk talked this morning. Let me just look at this. Musk talked this morning about Doge wanting to pursue upgrading the federal computer systems, which seems useful, but that's not what Doge has been talking about, is it? No. I mean, he also talked about a bunch of checks going out fraudulently to Social Security recipients, when the reality is that's just not true. I mean, it's not true on the level that he's talking about. He's going after agencies that really have demonstrated fairly lean budgets and great value. You're getting great return on things like the IRS, Social Security. This is not where there's government waste. If you want real government waste, you go across the Potomac River to the Pentagon. That's where it is. So this is to be continued. I'll talk to Rothmann about this next.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am excited about this next guest. Before I get to him, do I need to do anything else? Kim, Albert, I ask you. I think no. I don't have to mention Coachella Valley Coffee or anything like that.
No, you don't. We'll do that during news. You do have this one super sticker from Luis.
Irony from Luis. Altadina's motto, fending off property vultures. Altadena not for sale versus Trump equals America for sale. Get your gold card now. Oligarchs welcome. Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Luis, in Southern California. Altadena, you know, there is an area, of course, of Los Angeles called Altadena. It's in the foothills. It was devastated by the fires, and then a lot of these property vultures, he's right to call them that. These are opportunists going in and just buying up these properties, right? I mean, it's literally the fire sale.
I wonder if you're going to sell America for $5 million per gold card, and the oligarchs come. Does that mean they're really paying $5 million to get their super yachts back? Are we going to give all the planes and yachts back? Is that what's going to happen?
I don't know. I hadn't thought of that. That's like the 3D chess of it all. I don't know. This from Lee on the technical side. Mark and staff. Mark, your voice is way back compared to Kim's show and Nikki's show. You could be hotter. Maybe it's that your voice is much deeper. Just saying. I don't know. Put this on the list of things that we will look at.
Your voice sounds good right now. It sounds maybe a tad modulated because I think
you mean overdriven when you say modulated? What do you mean?
Yeah, overdriven on your end.
Yeah, I think there is an overdrive going. It's sounding overdriven here. And we have some. This has been reconfigured, and sadly, we kind of have to road test it live in the moment. So sorry about that, but thank you for the feedback because it does help. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy's a scholar, and it's a great pleasure to talk to someone who's a prolific writer and our former colleague, KGO Radio, who's a successful talk show host for years, knows the San Francisco Bay Area, but he also knows the Middle East and Europe and presidential history. He's the great John Rothmann, everyone. Hi, John.
Hi, Mark. Glad to be with you.
So before I get to what's happening with Musk and everything I was just speaking about, let's talk about the pivot that has gone on since your last visit. I mean, it's been a pronounced pivot toward Russia on the part of this president. I mean, it's not just a warming of relations. It's as though he is speaking the very language and the very framework of the world that's reflected in the thoughts and musings of Vladimir Putin.
You're absolutely right. Just remember that Putin is a great man, brilliant man, and obviously a great Democrat. And I say that with full sarcasm. Well, Zelensky is a dictator. I mean, it's so pathetic. It's sad. And remember, this is the president of the United States speaking. Now, on Friday, we will witness Zelensky coming to the White House. Let me just tell you, this is the greatest grab of resources I've ever seen in my life. And if Zelensky bows to this, it will be because he has no choice. And I can only tell you, it reminds me of Munich, 1938, with Hitler, Chamberlain, Daladier, and Chamberlain, Mussolini, the whole group sitting there. It's just almost unfathomable. So we're going to have to see what reactions are. The president this morning in his press conference made very clear that a deal has not yet been done. But can you imagine this kind of grab? Do you remember, Mark, when we were on KGO and the question came up about the oil wells in Iraq? And there were some listeners who called and said, well, let's seize the oil wells and take that money and repay ourselves for all the money we spent. This is the kind of American imperialism that is so disturbing to the world and, frankly, disturbing to me.
And they talk about manifest destiny. I mean, they actually mentioned manifest destiny, and some of this was a couple of weeks ago. And I associate manifest destiny with the worst of this country. I mean, you can tell everybody what manifest destiny was, but I associate it with the brutal elimination, murder, slaughter of Native people in this country and beyond.
It depends how you look on it. May I speak relatively and point out to you that for some, it was great because manifest destiny meant everything we have today. But you are right. There is an ugly side to manifest destiny. I watched the trailer for How the West Was Won, and it tells you the whole story in a movie about the conquest of the West. But we're talking something very serious here, and that has to do with the fact that we are talking about an American president who wants to seize the assets of another country to be repaid for something which we should have done logically and did. And now the question is, how will we react when Zelensky comes to Trump and whether or not he can be forced to sign something? Remember, in the Munich Agreement of 1938, no representative of a then country of Czechoslovakia was present. It was an imposed thing. And remember what happened on March 15th, 1938. 1939 rather, Hitler broke the agreement and went into Czechoslovakia and took the whole country.
Yeah, these agreements, I think, are not necessarily anything you can count on. In fact,
remember the Budapest Agreement? The idea that Ukraine would surrender its nuclear weapons. This was 1975. They would give up their nuclear weapons, and in return, the United States, Great Britain, John Major was prime minister, Boris Yeltsin of Russia, we all signed an agreement that the territorial integrity of Ukraine would be protected in return for that giving up of the nuclear weapons. And what happened? Nothing. So if I were a Ukrainian, I wouldn't trust the world at all.
Well, look, Ukraine's between a rock and a hard place to begin with, and you're right. The agreements that we've made, and this is one of the problems with the pivot that I was talking about, with all of a sudden going over to Russia. We, at least to this point, and maybe it's been unpopular with a portion of the population that says, we're spending too much money in Ukraine, et cetera. But the amount of money we're spending in Ukraine is, again, infinitesimal compared to the overall budget spends that we have. But anyway,
look up the Ukraine agreement of 1995. All of you just Google it, and you'll see what a shame that was. And God forbid Ukraine should find itself in that position.
So anyway, the guarantee,
Germany and the European allies are all saying they'll do anything they can to help Ukraine because they understand they're next on the list of Vladimir Putin.
Well, I mean, that's good that you mentioned this. I mean, because the Europe part of this is what I wanted to get to. But just on this last point, to button it out, I feel as though without a European troop presence or without some kind of peacekeeping presence, you will have just what you talk about, which is great. Putin moves in with his troops, and then he'll take the rest of Ukraine when he wants. I mean, at a time that he'll determine.
Yeah, and if you talk to Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, they're all afraid of the same thing. Let me just quickly say about the German elections. This was unprecedented. People aren't even talking about it. But the right wing in Germany, including the most extreme right-wing party in Germany, which got 20% of the vote, was endorsed by Elon Musk and by the vice president of the United States prior to the election. It's stunning interference. And may I say, the right wing in Germany is very disturbing, very reminiscent of the Hitler years. And everyone needs to understand that's what we're facing now. And American resolve, American involvement in all of this makes it even more disturbing.
The turning over of mineral rights, which is really why Zelensky is with Trump. I mean, this demand to get mineral rights. I wonder if you could speak to that. It feels as though we are extracting this from a guy kind of at gunpoint.
You've said it. That's exactly correct. That's exactly right. Really and truly, Zelensky has no choice but to sign on the dotted line. In return, theoretically, he gets American aid and support. But if you trust Donald Trump, I think you're making a big mistake.
Yeah, the idea is that support can fade away. We already know how this ends, says B.A. Ware. Ukraine signs an agreement to give Trump their mineral rights. Trump reneges, keeping the minerals, and Putin gets to reform the USSR's 1980 boundaries. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, it's tragic, and it's a joke, and it's a shame for the United States of America.
I drink Coachella Valley coffee and listen to Around the Political World with John Rothmann. That's the best 10 minutes of my day, says Silicon Valley Blocks. That's very good. John has a daily podcast. So now to this country. Again, your forecast and handicapping of what's going to happen with Ukraine and Europe is a grim one, but it is sort of a grim period. Before I get to this country, last thing about Europe, it does seem as though there's a coalition forming now apart from NATO, without America, and as we complete a sort of isolationist strategy, it does look as though the European countries on which we used to depend, and of course there was a reciprocal relationship, they depended on us, that is over, I mean, effectively. And now they're doing their own thing.
They won't be able to do their own thing. The arguments in Europe, the Brexit was a great example of how European unity can easily be broken. It is a disaster. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, founded, I would remind you, when Harry Truman was president, supported by Dwight Eisenhower, first as the commander of NATO and then as president, was bipartisan. And when you take a look now and you see directly what Trump is doing, it's horrific. By the way, you saw President Macron of France correct Trump while they were sitting in the Oval Office the other day. He did it gently. He did it nicely. But may I ask you, and I ask this question bluntly, what if the right takes control of France? What if Le Pen's party wins? I mean, these are horrific prospects. And the stability of Europe is dependent on the United States of America being directly involved. We remember vividly what happens when the United States withdraws. Remember the failure of the League of Nations. Without the United States, Europe is in big trouble. And I believe that with every fiber of my being.
This just handed to me. A handful of congressional Republicans want to get the U.S. out of the United Nations.
That's not new. It's old. I mean, yes. You remember, get the U.S. out of the UN and the UN out of the U.S. That was the slogan during the Goldwater campaign in the 60s. Not by Goldwater, by the way, but by people who supported him. We have to stay in the United Nations. I worked for Harold Stassen, and I'm his biographer. And I can tell you Stassen was an architect of the UN, and it was Harold Stassen's contention that the reason there wasn't a World War III was because we had a United Nations, a place where people could come and meet. And if we had the time, I would talk about the implications of the United Nations during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, which highlighted the need for a forum. Who will ever forget Adlai Stevenson saying to the Russian ambassador, "I'm prepared to wait until hell freezes over for your answers, sir." That's the kind of role the UN plays. By the way, I'm not a fan of the UN on many, many levels. They are completely bankrupt on so many levels, but we have no choice. We have no alternative but to try to work with the United Nations and do our best. By the way, you understand that Elise Stefanik, who is giving up her House seat, is not yet approved because she can't leave the Congress because it would leave the speaker with only a 1-vote margin.
Right.
It's nuts.
And you mentioned Elise Stefanik in this context because she would be the United Nations.
She'd have to resign.
Yeah.
If she takes the UN job officially, she has to resign. So she is staying in the House until all this legislation passes, and then she'll take her post at the UN.
There's more of this, and then I'll get to Musk and stuff, but I see this a lot. Valerie says, let's remember if Joe Biden's ego was in check, he would have kept his promise to be a one-term president. We would have had a convention, elected a candidate, and beat any Republican. Do you buy into that?
No, I don't, because the Democrats in a primary would have selected Kamala Harris to be the nominee. I have no doubt about it.
She historically didn't primary well, John. I'm surprised you didn't say that.
No, but I'm talking about being an incumbent vice president running for a presidential nomination. No incumbent vice president who wanted a presidential nomination has been denied that nomination since Alban W. Barkley in 1952. And Barkley was 74 years old and was forced out of the race by his own allies because they viewed him as too old. By the way, he died in 1956. His last words, "I would rather be a servant in the house of the Lord than sit in the seats of the mighty." And then he dropped dead right there.
Oh, wow. Well, that was very impressive. Yes, I must say. Gosh.
So I say this because it's a standard line that people use. It's simply, I do not think is valid. There was no Democrat who could have defeated Kamala Harris in a primary.
You don't think Josh Shapiro could have defeated Kamala Harris?
He wouldn't have run against her. No Democrat was going to oppose Kamala Harris to the nomination.
So it was a coronation one way or the other.
Yes, of course.
Okay. I mean, that's
and by the way, if she'd won, it would be a whole different conversation.
Right. Obviously. But these are legit issues that are growing around that question, as we've seen sort of
Josh
America.
Shapiro, by the way, will probably run in 3.5 years. And I expect the other person they're talking about is Amy Klobuchar, but her problem is she's had a bout of cancer. I understand she's in full remission, but these issues will come up. And somebody asked me, who will the nominee be? And I said, if Barack Obama had not given that speech at the 2004 Democratic National Convention, we wouldn't have heard from him in 2008. There's a lot of time for the Democrats to sort things out. And by the way, Jimmy who? You remember Jimmy Carter? Nobody remembered who Jimmy Carter was when he was out of office, and he'd never made a splash, and yet he captured the Democratic nomination. So it's a completely fluid situation. You're not running, are you, Mark?
No, I'm not. I am. I wish I could run with this newly configured election system that I think they're going to have a chance to go after in a big way. And when you have that on your side, you really can lose. You cannot lose another election. There's just voter suppression on a level that we've never seen before,
and can
John.
I make one other quick comment, and that has to do with the FBI. Since last we appeared together, we have seen a colleague of ours, although he was not simultaneously on Cumulus with us on KGO, is now the deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
You're talking about Dan Bongino.
I am speaking about Don Bongino. And if you listen to him, and by the way, he's on for the rest of the week. He hasn't gone off yet because he hasn't taken the job and he has to fulfill certain obligations. But I can only tell you this. The guy is a conspiracy theorist. He believes that the election was stolen. He is a man. Go back and listen to his tapes. It's unbelievable. As unbelievable as Kash Patel being confirmed as director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It is a shame. And if J. Edgar Hoover were alive today, as I like to say, he'd be rolling over in his grave.
Yeah, Well, again, if he were alive today, he wouldn't be in his grave. So,
yeah, you pointed that out to me before. I just like to bait you.
I love it, so I will. Yeah, I'll ding it. But this is the point. There's Dan Bongino speaking at CPAC, and boy, there is a fervor. There's almost a religious fervor at CPAC when you hear these various extreme positions pursued. But they feel they're battling for the soul of America, John. And when you're doing that, I mean, the law be damned.
But that is exactly what Donald Trump said last week. He said, essentially, he is the law. And when you have that kind of attitude from a president of the United States, it's very dangerous. And it permeates the administration. When the vice president of the United States can say, we don't really care what the Supreme Court says, we're going to go ahead and do what we damn well please. And that's what Donald Trump is saying. And when this all comes to the Supreme Court, the whole question of presidential authority, and if, in fact, they don't agree with the Supreme Court, I think they're going to respond by saying, well, who cares? We don't care two toots what you have to say. And I think that's why there will be a reaction. At least I hope there will be a reaction in the Supreme Court. The only two justices I think are lost are Thomas and Alito, but the others, there's a shot.
Thus far, the courts have been something that they've complained about, Musk and Trump, but they have grudgingly, it seems, acceded to the demands of the court, except in the USAID dispersal of monies that they wouldn't unfreeze, despite the fact that the court had said you must unfreeze them. In fact, the judge, with a second statement from the bench, said, hey, guys, I said unfreeze those funds. They have an odd relationship with the courts right now, John.
But it's the Supreme Court that matters. These are all lower court decisions, all of which can be appealed. In the end, it will be the United States Supreme Court that is on the spot. And make no mistake, Donald Trump has said he wants this to go to the Supreme Court. He believes that the conservative justices will support him. And all I can tell you is if that happens, American democracy as we know it will be profoundly changed. I can't help but reflect that this is the kind of situation Richard Nixon would have relished, where he could override the court. And remember, in 1974, when Nixon considered that, he all of a sudden realized you just can't do it. It would destroy America. And that's what Al Gore said when he conceded the presidency to George Bush on the basis of a 5-4 decision before the United States Supreme Court. Our problem now is to get these cases to the Supreme Court fast enough so the court can consider them. But I want to be very clear. If the court sides with Trump, American democracy will be in deep trouble, and the balance of powers as we know it will be gone. One of our listeners, Rob from Richmond, who you will remember because I think he used to call your call occasionally, your show, sent me a tip on a book published in 2010, published by Oxford University Press. It's The Presidency Unbound. And that is what the Trump administration wants. They want an administrative presidency, a unitary presidency, a presidency in which the president's dictates are the rule. I think I showed you on this program, I've done it so many times, the book, We Could Not Trust Our King. And what Donald Trump is trying to be is the king. And I must tell you, the thing that disturbs me most of all the things we've talked about is the lack of backbone by Republicans in Congress. You may remember the Jordan rule. Senator Jordan was once solicited by Spiro Agnew for a vote on the floor of the United States Senate. And Senator Jordan, who is a very conservative Republican, said, here's the Jordan rule. If I'm solicited for my vote by the vice president, even if I think he's right, I will vote against him. And that was to assert the independence of the United States Senate. We don't see that kind of courage in the United States Senate today, and that's tragic.
Well, I mentioned that there's a little bit of pushback, and this is about the only pushback there's been around the budget, and that a lot of these changes that Doge is making, that Musk is making, need to go through Congress. And there are now members of Congress speaking up. I mean, they're in short supply, but Tom Tillis isn't nobody. He's a senator.
No, and that's the whole
juice.
point. I believe, and I've said this to you before, and that's why we had this discussion last week about the question of the limits. I believe that ultimately anyone who respects the institutions of the United States government will have to oppose Donald Trump. And I think the Republicans are going to be put in that position. One other quick point. In the end, somebody asked me, will Trump be held responsible? After all, he can't ever to be on the ballot again for president. And my answer was the Republicans are going to be held responsible. If I were a Democratic strategist and these things that I think are happening happen, I would run against the Republicans who didn't have the backbone to stand up and fight back.
John, that is it for today. I'm downcast.
How dare
about the
you?
fact that
I mean,
must,
really, Mark.
we must wrap this up. I know. I'm wondering what you're talking about on Around the Political World with John Rothmann, because there is a flood of news and stuff that requires you weighing in. What was the lead story today?
I do 10 minutes every day. I'll tell you the lead story, which hit me profoundly. And that is the attempt by the White House to control the White House press corps. I was very close to Helen Thomas, who was a correspondent with the White House for years and years and years. I used to interview Helen on KGO with some regularity. People love those interviews. If Helen Thomas were alive, she would be leading a boycott of this White House. And I believe Merriman Smith and the others who were veteran White House reporters would be so appalled by Donald Trump's effort to control the flow of news, to control who can sit in the press room. Can you imagine? Think, Mark, how often we took our news off of the AP. We went to the AP when we wanted complete updates, quickly, the Associated Press. Donald Trump won't let them sit in the White House, won't let them be part of the press pool that travels with the president. This is, to me, the most disturbing thing, because where do you and I get our information? Oh, we have our contacts, but I read all the media. I really try to understand what all the media outlets are saying. And the idea that the White House wants to control the media is absolutely horrific. And if that happens, we will not live in a free democratic society. You know, I think people need to understand the first thing dictators do is to eliminate a free press.
This is exactly right. I mean, I'm so glad that you're mentioning this, because to me it's alarming. There is no, and you may remember this from the first Trump administration, there's no edict or constitutional precept that says that there have to even be White House briefings. And they actually shut down the White House briefings, you may recall, in the first Trump administration. It was a big thing. What are you doing? There's a custom to have these briefings, but it's really the Wild West. But the organization that chooses who goes to those White House briefings isn't the White House.
No, it's the White House press corps.
Exactly.
But what the White House does control is who can be in the room at the White House. And that's what they're doing now. And that's why the AP is being excluded. And that's why there was a lawsuit against 60 Minutes. Did you hear Donald Trump this morning in his press conference or his statements saying that 60 Minutes had cooked the tapes of the interview with Kamala Harris? Absolute rubbish, not true. And yet people let this slide by. I know we've got to wrap it up, but I want to be clear. Why is a Mark Thompson program so important? Why is Around the Political World with John Rothmann so important? Why are those independent sources so critical? Because that's where you find these things out and where you can then consider your options. My own view is we are in a struggle for democracy. And may I tell you, when Joe Biden's administration is talked of and his statements are talked of, the one that he made recently before he left the office about the threat to American democracy, there is no greater threat to American democracy than the threat to the First Amendment. If we cannot speak out, if we cannot be heard, if, in fact, the White House can control news, we are in deep, deep trouble.
Well, we've just become essentially a propaganda machine. You know, it's kind of like what Fox News does.
And Putin's Russia.
Yeah.
What do you think what do you think so upsets you? Asked about Ukraine. You know what really bothers me? The White House, the President of the United States, is parroting the statements made by the Russian press. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a President of the United States who is parroting the propaganda of a nation which is clearly an adversary? I mean, this is incomprehensible. And I wake up every day to the news and I shake my head in absolute disbelief at what I am seeing and hearing. Now, last week, you and I debated the question of whether American democracy can survive this kind of assault. And I said, yes, our systems will work. But I'm going to amend that and tell you, if our systems don't work, the conversation you and I are having will cease and America will change profoundly. So it is not just a belief, but it's a hope, a necessity. May I say one other quick thing? I watched the funeral in Israel of the Bibas family, the mother and the 2 children. I wept today. And if you have any sense, turn it on, listen to what happened, watch the outpouring of emotion. It is heart-wrenching, absolutely horrific. And the people of Israel were united today in their concern about the results of these murders. Let me just end. They buried Sherry Bibas in the same coffin with her 2 sons. I have no words to reflect my feeling of horror. But you know what scares me even more? The silence of the world. The silence. It's deafening and horrifying. So I just wanted to throw that in because I would not conclude our interview without pointing that out. If you have a minute, Mark, just read the remarks of the Bibas father and husband. I read the words and I wept. Anyway.
The tragedy is compounded in so many ways, even as we get back the hostage remains, and the entire situation gets more tragic by the hour, it seems.
You're right.
John,
thank you for letting me. Thank you for letting me.
Of course, we love our time with you. Thank you, John Rothmann. Everybody.
See you next week.
See you next time.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is also weird on the heels of John's emotional relating of that event today in Israel. It's weird that there was a viral video. It's being claimed that it was produced by Trump about what the Gaza Strip could be, if it were developed with hotels and with Gaza 2025. Now, it's being claimed that, so you can look at this. We're showing it now on YouTube, and it showed up on Donald Trump's. I have trouble believing that this is real, to be honest. Am I?
Oh, it's definitely AI, but
no. I know it's AI, but did Trump really sanction this? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, really? I mean, it's pictures for those who are just listening. It's pictures of the devastation in Gaza. Keep it running, Albert, and I'll just kind of go. And then through a bunch of quick cuts, they now go to, who's that? Elon Musk eating on the beach, Trump with these kind of, and these gorgeous, looks like Miami Beach type scenes, and money falling from the skies, a Trump Gaza hotel, and again, them eating falafels or whatever Musk is eating there on the beach. And then Trump, Gaza, is there over these 2 lounge chairs as they sit by the pool. Now, I get that Trump is tone deaf to the tragedy of the Palestinian people and those who are there on Gaza, but is he that tone deaf? I mean, this is to call this insulting and objectionable is to be polite. I mean, this is incredible. Albert, you're telling me that this is legitimate.
I think that Trump shared it on Truth Social. He might not have made it, but when he saw it on Truth Social, he shared it.
Yeah.
It looks like a real post too. It's not like it doesn't look. I'm not familiar with Truth Social, but it looks like it's not something he like reposted or something.
Yeah, Rothmann, you had something else you wanted to throw in on this?
Yes, it's obscene. And I want people to understand how, look at that. Trump, Gaza, it is, and the solid gold statue of Donald Trump for saving Gaza. I mean, what he should have done rather than reposting it, as Albert just pointed out, is he should have condemned it immediately. And that's part of the problem. And I thank you for bringing me back. I do listen to you. I want you to know, even when I'm not on the air, just so people know that. But I'm so glad you showed this. It's just beyond comprehension.
Yeah, of course. No, I agree.
Obscene.
Obscene's the right word. Thank you, John. Anyway, thanks for running it, Albert, because I saw it and I just was like, is this for real? I mean, it's absolutely out of control. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, everyone. I do want to mention to you, because I have fallen in love with my plumber, and I want you in Southern California to know that we, Courtney and myself, looked at plumbers. Yes, we met with 5. It was like speed dating. We met with 5 different plumbing outfits. We had a big plumbing job that needed to get done, and we settled on these guys. We paid full fare for it, and they came in less expensively than any other plumbing service, and they were amazing. And so we fell in love with them, and they said, maybe we could come on your show or something like that. And I said, oh gosh, we could do a little mention, because we're not just a Southern California show, even though we cover California, we cover other, but then it occurred to me that people might know people in Southern California. And so if you know somebody in Southern California, or you live in Southern California yourself, I encourage you to check these guys out. Who are these great guys, you're saying? They are called One Day Rooter and Plumbing. The number 1, and then One Day Rooter and Plumbing. So it's the number 1 day rooter and plumbing.com. And you can reach them there on their websites. You can see all the stuff they do. You can reach them at info@onedayrouterandplumbing.com. You can also call them 626-702-0202. They're insured, they're bonded, they're licensed, but anything you need that's plumbing related, maybe you've been putting it off, now is the time to get this discount. We have a 10% discount if you mention the show, the Mark Thompson Show, and an additional 5% discount for seniors, for the military, and for first responders. So that's potentially 15% off. And if they can't, address the problem, they'll tell you. They're super cool, family-owned, family-run, and again, grab your discount and check them out. One Day Rooter and Plumbing. If you know somebody in SoCal, definitely get in touch with them, because this is an opportunity, I think, to get a great relationship with a great organization. They handle LA County and Orange County in Southern California. All our Southern California listeners, jump on the One Day Rooter and Plumbing train the way we have. You will be happy you did.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The Alex Ware says this: please, 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 Mark, get volumes lowered on the podcast populated commercials. Very rude. Earware is unusable.
Oh, no.
Alex, I'll tell you something else, Alex Herrera. First of all, thank you for bringing this to our attention. But secondly, we have no control over the volume of the commercials that populate. I will look into it to see if we can do something. And if we can, we'll do it. Like if there's a way to flatten everything out, we will. You can see we're having enough problems with the volumes on our show, but I will, at the same time that I'm looking into that, I'll look into the volumes on YouTube. I promise you I will ask after that. My favorite MT segment, says Luis, is John Rothmann in the Multiverse of Positivity. It's an alt reality, but love you, John. Keep bringing us hope. Yeah. Alt reality sort of suggests YouTube Premium, says Jay. All Mark, no commercials. Yeah, you can pay for that upgrade, and then there are no commercials at all. Don't forget February 28th. This is something that somebody sent me, and I know I was aware of it, but I was going to share the actual email, and maybe I'll do it after Kim's news. It's the Do Not Spend Day. It's the end of this week, right? Friday of this week. And that is a protest, essentially, a maneuver to make your voice heard. So, again, I'll send. Did I send it to you, Albert? The artwork on that? Maybe I didn't, but I will, and we'll post it before the end of the show. I promised somebody who wrote into me at the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. Thank you. That's our address, and I promised I'd share it, and so there it is. Thank you. Yeah, I thought I might have given it to you, or maybe that's
supposed to be an economic blackout.
Right. So if you read through this, it's First Collective Action. This is from Heather Cox Richardson, who's a brilliant historian. We'll get her on the show. Economic blackout for 24 hours, Friday, February 28th, from midnight until 11:59 p.m. Families, friends, acquaintances turn off the economy, it says. Show who really holds power in the U.S. What you can do, they say, buy only essentials, absolute necessities, food, medicine, emergency supplies, but the goal is to buy nothing. If you must spend, only support small local businesses. Spread this message, email friends everywhere, post on social, share, and document. Why? Corporations, banks only care about their sacred bottom line, it says. You can disrupt the economy for just one day to send a powerful message. If they fail to listen, the next blackout will be longer. Make history together, they say here.
Does it really matter, though, if you buy the things you need the day before and the day after? You're still buying the things you need.
Yeah, I think from a bottom line standpoint, it may not matter, but if you could make this statement on the one day, it might actually send a message. But you're right. I mean, from just the standpoint of the bottom line, it's probably not going to change anything. They say do not purchase in-store or online. No Amazon, Walmart, Best Buy, nowhere. No fast food, no gas, major retailers, no credit or debit cards for non-essential spending. We can do this together. I think these boycotts are harder these days, but it'll be interesting to see if this actually does have an effect. And it is Friday, the 28th, that they want to do it. The other thing I would say is that didn't the immigration movement make a similar move when they kept everything? They kept a lot of immigrants and immigrant labor home for a day. Am I remembering that right, Kim?
Yeah, that's right.
And it did show you how dependent the culture and society is on immigrant labor. I mean, we know that. We talk about it all the time. But sometimes you have to make the point explicitly. And so this is that, maybe that first effort. And look, the last thing I'll say, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was going to say, it may or may not work, but I like the effort. As you know, I like things that make noise, that, don't hurt people, but necessarily make the statement. And I think this could do that. So it might be the first in an evolving opportunity to make your voice heard.
They're also trying to, after the one-day economic blackout event on the 28th, trying to get people to do a 40-day Target fast, because apparently Target has dropped some of its DEI policies. And so there's a move to now boycott Target starting on March 5th to oppose companies moving away from diversity, equity, and inclusion. They want people to boycott Target for 40 days. That might be a little more difficult. A one-day event might be more doable than, for people that shop there going 40 days without it.
Yeah, you need to make a plan, I guess, if you're legitimately someone who shops there all the time, you're going to have to make a plan if you're going to,
you
knock
gotta
it off
get
for
all
40
the
days.
Gen Z and millennials who just love, what do you want to do? Let's just go to Target. You need to target those people. You want to try to do that.
Yeah. But again, and somebody said this, and I didn't know this, but this is one of 10 planned moves like this. So if that's true, then each one may gain greater momentum. There's that. And then it's always a question of how it's played in the media, like with a shrug or with kind of attention to what happened. So we have, it's the Planet Stupid today. On Wednesdays, we talk about the environment, and we'll get that with Kim. But right now, a little news from Kim, news and commentary. So news and commentary from Kim. Smash the like button if you would. It helps us in the world of
with your iron rod.
Yeah, in the world of YouTube, it's important. I also wanted to give you a sense. We've got some great guests coming up. I'll tell you what. I'll rally them for you in the minutes during Kim's news as well. So I do want to let you know we just got some real fun and important guests in the pipeline. So we'll get all of that going as well. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't, all of that stuff, and news and commentary with Kim McAllister next as we continue.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by Coachella'ValleyCoffee.com. President Trump touched on numerous topics during his first cabinet meeting of his second term. Today, Trump said his administration is working toward an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. He also mentioned tariffs against China that will soon take effect. The president promising any cuts to the federal government will not impact Social Security or Medicare rather. He also praised the efforts of Elon Musk, who was in attendance at that meeting, to cut government fraud and waste.
He's still in love with Elon.
He still is. The president's so-called big, beautiful spending bill is heading to the Senate. Republicans passed their budget resolution yesterday. It was a slim, though, 217 to 215 vote. House Speaker Mike Johnson will now negotiate with the Senate until a budget can finally be passed and signed by Trump. There are Republicans in the House that oppose the bill's planned spending cuts and how they will affect social programs like Medicaid.
And don't forget, this is what I was mentioning in the first hour, there is a different set of priorities in the Senate than there is in the House. So as that budget moves into the Senate, it is going to be worked over. And that's why it's sometimes hard to get these budgets through, because you need some coalition of House and Senate thinking when pursuing a strategy to get the budget and the priorities through.
As you mentioned earlier, reports say Ukrainian President Zelensky is going to visit the United States after the two countries signed off on the framework for a minerals deal. Trump has been pushing for a rare earth minerals deal as a way for Ukraine to pay back the United States for aid provided during the war with Russia. While Trump called for $500 billion in rare earth minerals, Zelensky pushed back on that figure, saying the United States provided Ukraine with $100 billion in aid. That's not quite even. A federal judge is blocking immigration agents from operations in houses of worship for Quakers and a handful of other religious groups. The judge saying the Trump administration policy could violate their religious freedom and that should be blocked, while a lawsuit challenging the immigration operations in houses of worship plays out. A handful of congressional Republicans would like to get the United States out of the United Nations. Chip Roy of Texas says this is keeping in line with President Trump's America First agenda. Roy says the UN has enjoyed American tax money while undermining our interests, attacking our allies, and bolstering our adversaries. He says all that while member nations are required to make payments, the United States pays the most by far. Roy's bill currently under review by the House Committee on Foreign Affairs.
I mean, look, the United Nations has got a lot of problems. I mean, I don't even know that, some of their resolutions are anything more than things that you should ignore, That said, you really have in the United Nations an opportunity for nations to at least get together, which you must have, because you can see the way these positions become so entrenched that ultimately end up in armed conflict, and you can have hot wars all over the world. You still have them, despite the fact that there is a UN. I get it, but this is an important. I would suggest, and again, with huge flaws. Like I'm not even a fan of the UN, but I still feel its existence is important.
Texas is reporting the first measles death in the United States since 2015. Totally unnecessary. The death was confirmed by the head of the public health for Lubbock's health department. 7 other states have reported measles cases so far this year, including Alaska, California, Georgia, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, and Rhode Island. The outbreak in Texas has infected more than 120 people now. This disease was considered to be eliminated in the United States in 2000.
Well, I mean, this is, again, from and around a community that rejected the measles vaccine. And, the amount of disinformation around vaccines is scary, because vaccines have been one of the great ways in which there's been life extension here. I mean, it's extraordinary. One of the great ways in which the human race has helped to sustain itself is the development of these vaccines. These pandemics used to wipe people out. Google it. I mean, it's insanity what's been old world and new world when you compare the two. That, when 2/3 of the globe dies because of the Black Plague or because of smallpox, you end up with a very different looking globe. And this was a way in which nature culled the human species. I mean, this really is part of the balance of nature. But what I would say is the great victory that the human species has had is associated with vaccines. I mean, just in terms of medical breakthroughs, it's extraordinary. And the idea that you could cocoon yourself the way they have in Texas and other communities that are, staunch anti-vaxxers, it's scary. And these are the results.
And one of the problems is that the anti-vax community sticks together. And so when you have an outbreak, it spreads like wildfire. It seems like sometimes people need there's such a move to not believe things right now, to think that, oh, it's all a lie. They're somehow lying to me. I don't believe anything until it happens to me. But the problem is, you see the death of a child. When that happens to you, you can't go back from that. Do you really need to have that happen to you to understand that we had stamped this out and now you're bringing it back?
Well, and I would say, and I've said this many times now for years, I get it. Big pharma is bad. I agree. Big pharma is bad in many ways. Most of the ways that big pharma is bad are associated with prices. They make breakthroughs on medications, and then they charge you this exorbitant number to get those medications. Mm-hmm. It's not that the breakthroughs are bad. It's that the cost is bad. But what's happened is we've lost the plot. So now it's big pharma is bad. And so anything out of big pharma, they're trying to make you sicker so that they can sell you more of this. And you get completely obscured in that, the fact that these are incredible breakthroughs. So again, big pharma bad, but that doesn't mean that everything big pharma has done is bad. So you cannot throw out that baby with the bathwater, and they have, and the result is that people are dying from measles now because they don't get the measles vaccine.
The FDA is giving the thumbs up on a smartwatch safety feature. Yesterday, Google revealed the agency cleared the loss of pulse detection on the Pixel Watch 3. The FDA's approval now paves the way for it to be available in the United States by the end of next month. This feature was designed to ask a watch user if they're okay if a pulse is not detected. And if there's no response, the watch calls 911 and it gives the location of that user as well. The family of the Menendez brothers plans to speak out today as they continue to work to get the brothers released from prison. Relatives of Eric and Lyle Menendez continue to advocate for the pair's release. They plan to discuss key facts surrounding this case with the press later this afternoon.
Well, the key facts are they murdered their parents in cold blood and went back, reloaded, and their mother crawled away, they blasted her again with a shotgun. I get it. They claim abuse, etc., but it's I think they're on thin ice, and I state it with even greater confidence because we had an esteemed prosecutor on who went through everything and basically said what I've just said, and then he said this. He said, give us that case. Give me that case, the Menendez case, again, and give me a jury, and I will convict them again. They are absolutely guilty.
San Diego County looking at ways to clear homeless camps during high fire risk days. The Board of Supervisors voted 4-0 to move forward with plans to clear homeless camps on red flag days with high winds and dry conditions. The board voting to come up with options for emergency camp removals and ways to move people out of high-risk areas while looking for other housing options for them. A supervisor says several fires started in San Diego homeless camps last month and then spread during the Santa Ana winds.
I've just gotten this word that Lyle Menendez has just been appointed by Donald Trump to run the ATF, which is an extraordinary thing. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, what?
He'll have to get a full pardon, and then he'll run the ATF. Lyle Menendez. Yeah. The president was unaware of who he was until the Netflix series came out, and then he was so taken by it that, no, that is not true. But you got to admit, you thought for a second it's possible, right? It's possible.
Yet the scary
He's a fine
thing
young
is,
man.
yes.
He was done dirty by this system.
Do not know what you are talking about.
A group of Los Angeles firefighters is urging Mayor Karen Bass to reinstate former fire chief Kristen Crowley. The group of Los Angeles women in the fire service sent a letter to the mayor, the city council, the board of fire commissioners demanding Crowley get her job back. Bass fired Crowley last Friday, citing her handling of the deadly wildfires. The letter calls the decision to remove Crowley as chief inaccurate and a blatant attempt to shift blame where it doesn't belong.
Yeah, that's true. It is just that. It's a blatant attempt to shift blame. I mean, Mayor Bass may not survive this. I'd be very surprised if she survives it in Los Angeles. But man, she has thrown the "it wasn't my fault" play at everything. Right?
I
Didn't
blame
know about
you.
it. Wasn't my. That's right. She needed that drop. That's right. I blame you.
I blame you.
Thank you. But as we've said before, she had that moment in the jetway where she was confronted by that reporter saying, "Don't you think you owe an apology to the people of Los Angeles?" Which was a really arch way to approach her. But she needed to handle that. She needed to say, look, obviously you're trying to get clicks with this kind of question. And the reality is there are real people affected here. And I've come back to my district as quickly as I could. And I've come to help the people of Los Angeles in the way that I feel they need. Whatever you say, blah, 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 you politicize, you politician it. But the idea that she just stood there and kind of continued to have the questions peppered at her, it was an awkward moment, but it had a virality to it. And now that same kind of moment, like what did you do? Why weren't you there? Et cetera. These questions are going to dog her, and I don't see any way she can survive. You can blame the fire chief, and you can blame, and there probably is legitimate blame to go around in some ways. But there's also blame that you have to take as mayor of Los Angeles and the area that was going to be affected by a record-breaking historic windstorm that you knew would likely create these issues. And if you didn't know that, then that's also damnable. So I see nowhere to run for her.
Speaking of the fire, State Farm estimates it'll pay $7.6 billion to cover fire insurance claims in the Los Angeles area alone. They do say that reinsurance, people re-signing up, they get some money that way, will lower its actual losses to about $612 million. Apple is keeping the company's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in place. The iPhone maker's shareholders voting to forge ahead, opposing efforts by conservatives to get rid of the program. Although, as we mentioned earlier, several companies have already dropped DEI efforts. And as you mentioned earlier, this weird video we know it's an AI-generated music video that shows Trump sunbathing in a newly renovated Gaza Strip. Trump is sharing this video. It was posted on Truth Social Tuesday, showing the president lounging with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at a resort called Trump Gaza, while a rap song calls it a golden future. The video also shows Elon Musk eating hummus and tossing money into the air, a giant golden statue of Trump in the public square. The White House is not commenting on this video at this point. Trump said earlier this month he would like to relocate Palestinians living in war-torn Gaza so he could turn it into a resort. What did he call it? The Riviera of the Middle East?
Yeah, it's obscene. It just is. I mean,
Sure.
the what's the old phrase? The bodies aren't even cold yet. I mean, they literally aren't even cold yet. And you're suggesting this crap? It's just this is
You mean
truly
you can't
an
catch the
obscenity.
money falling from the sky?
Yeah,
No?
it's just brutal.
A Missouri woman is pleading guilty in the scam to sell Elvis Presley's Graceland estate. Prosecutors say Lisa Findley forged the signatures of Presley's late daughter, Lisa Marie, on a note that claims she didn't pay back nearly $4 million on a loan connected to Findley. Graceland was fraudulently listed as collateral, and Findley illegally put that Tennessee estate up for auction. It came close to working, too. Findley could get 57 months in federal prison when she is sentenced in June. And lastly, Colombian police have arrested a man who was allegedly caught trying to smuggle cocaine under his wig. Police say it's a wild idea, Mark.
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Police say the 40-year-old suspect was detained Monday at the Cartagena airport when he was caught trying to board a flight to Amsterdam with more than 200 grams of cocaine packed in little tiny baggies under his toupee. They say the suspect has a prior criminal record, which
we
includes
have pictures of it. For those just listening, there are these little packets sewn into the bottom of the toupee. We were talking yesterday and saying that the deniability when you have like your luggage and you're smuggling cocaine or something, you can say, I don't know, look, when my wife packed it, or I left it there for a moment and somebody may have pushed something in there. I mean, I had no knowledge of this. You have some even thin ice deniability, but when it's sewn into your toupee,
what?
You really don't have any high ground. Yeah.
I blame you.
I'm bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you need a real. You mean I'm not allowed to carry a cocaine sewn into my?
It was wrong. It was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Yeah, you got to go full tubing. You really got to go full tubing with your apology, right?
This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. A little bit of heaven in your cup. It is the best coffee at the Mark Thompson household. It's the best tea over here at the McAllister household.
Mm-hmm.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. So good. Check out the website, see if there's anything you want. And when you get to the checkout stage, there's a little box to enter a code. Put in Mark T, MARKT, no spaces in between. That'll get you 10% off. Then it's almost like magic. Within a day or two, boom, the coffee, the tea arrives at your door. Sometimes they put in some little extras, which is really fun. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. You won't be sorry.
I am enjoying a cup right now. With every cup I have in my mind and in real life, I hear a
nice.
It's so
Ocotillo espresso again?
Ocotillo espresso, yes. We grind it for a regular pot of coffee. Now, you know what I mean? It's a regular drip is what it's called. And it's just delicious. So I recommend it. And Matt, who is the newest member of our crew, you will get I will get you a pound of the El Gato espresso coffee.
So good.
Yeah. And if
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
I mean, if you don't drink coffee, Matt, you can still have it and you can give it as a gift to someone.
I do. I'm looking forward.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, good. Very good. All right. So you will have it. And by the way, this mug is something else Matt will be getting as a new member of our crew. This is the We Could Try Ignoring It, Sir mug.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
Yeah, it's
Wait, you're giving Matt a mug? I don't even have a mug.
Oh, I didn't know you
Michael
didn't have
sure
a mug.
doesn't even have a mug.
I will make sure you get one. Yours will be the chit. You'll be the chit mug. But
they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Unequal, inequitable Mark Thompson show.
Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great.
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
It was great. I loved it.
Right on. Thank you for being here. It is really cool to have everybody on board. We are a daily show. We do a live show for you between 11 and 1 on the West, between 2 and 4 in the East, and it is really cool to have everybody throwing in. There was a comment about Karen Bass in Los Angeles. CC Ryder, who is a terrific mind and a great investigative reporter in her own right and is a regular on the show. I will wait for full post-mortem report on the LA fire management, but not one person, GOP or Democratic leader, could stop hurricane force winds. Catastrophic event. I 100% endorse that comment. That is true. I don't think it would have mattered if Karen Bass had been here. From the standpoint of the damage that was done, it's very possible it would be maybe a change around the edges, but I don't even think so. I think the event as it went down would have taken place in the exact same way, with hurricane force winds forcing essentially the air attack on these flames, which is the only way to beat back flames like this. I mean, this is a conflagration that was immense, And with the kind of terrain and the kind of immensity of that fire, there's no way you could fight it unless you had planes and choppers in the air. And you couldn't get them in the air because of the intensity of the wind. So those wind velocities for a full day, those wind velocities were so high that all of that damage was happening, and there would have been no way to beat it back. Now, the full postmortem report to which CC Ryder is mentioning or referring, that might include questions as to might there have been better prep and positioning of assets than there was. We don't really know the answers to that yet, but in any case, I'm speaking about the political price that Karen Bass will pay. I'm not talking about her actual ability to have affected the outcome. I'm saying that it was a bad look for her not to be there, and sometimes that's enough for you to lose political power. I mean, I gave you the example of what happened in Chicago. You can Google it. I mean, again, these huge snowstorms that affect big cities, they can oftentimes affect politics in a dramatic way, and I feel like this was her big snowstorm. So that's it. Karen Bass is an amateur and a lightweight, says Luis. She obviously needed to blame Biden, Harris, trans people, and DEI in order to cover up her incompetence. Love Donald Trump, he says. All right, yeah, you got to know who to blame. On Big Pharma, B.A. Ware says, well said, Mark, that's the moderate's position. Take the good and improve the bad. Yeah, exactly. And I'll just mention, speaking of Donald Trump and speaking of Big Pharma, one of the things that Biden did successfully was finally get some negotiating power with the Big Pharma crew on the cost of so many of these medications that have been jacked up. So now the government, which buys more than any other one entity, right, for those who use Medicare, and basically government insurance is their biggest client, the Big Pharma. Finally, Biden had negotiated at least the limits on 10 different medications, and Donald Trump has undone all of that. That's already in the first month. That is undone. So to me, that was shameful, but yet again, something else that this administration has taken aim at, because they are in the bosom of big money and, in this case, Big Pharma. All right, let's do this. How do we do this, Albert? Kim spoke to, isn't it right? Kim spoke to Belinda, right? Okay.
Yes, she did.
This is, we have a new person here, Matt, today, and I wish we could do this smoothly, but Matt has to see us. This is how we do it, Matt. We live out loud on this show. So I ask Albert, I ask Kim, how are we doing it? So I'm going to introduce it. This is a segment that we like to do on Wednesdays, and typically I will be leading the segment. But here, Kim stepped up, having just toweled off from rescuing her son from the unforgiving surf that almost took his life.
I wasn't aware of this, Kim. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's the first time I'm hearing it.
It was incredible. I will tell the story in greater detail another time, but this is It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
It's the planet stupid on this Wednesday, and we welcome our friend and eco-journalist Belinda Waymouth to the show. Hi, Belinda.
Hey,
Yay.
how are you?
I forgot the applause. The recorded applause must happen.
Oh, yeah. I need that. I can't go on without it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. There's a lot to talk about. And I know that one of the things that you wanted to mention is a happy thing. And I love the little animals and creatures of the world. So
yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah. Let's start with the turtles, because this is really lovely. So these are little yellow spotted river turtles in Brazil, and they are endangered, surprise, surprise, but there's a university that has been running a conservation program for these turtles, and we can show you 4,900 that were just released into the wild. Here they go. it's absolutely fantastic because you see all the little babies, rushing to get in the water. Some are a bit confused, but they get there, and you can see they're completely teeny tiny, and this is a victory.
Cute.
Yeah, they're so cute. And the thing that's amazing, so this university so far, they've put 70,000 baby turtles into the river, which is really, this is what we need to be doing. We need to help other species. And so when you see it happening, because, Brazil with their new leader they're helping indigenous people reforest deforested parts of the Amazon, reseed, plant trees, and they're looking after their turtles. It's a real win. So we have started with something super positive. And then I wanted to tell you an interesting thing. So economists can't quite believe this because, China is, in the stage of sort of rapid, development, but they have plateaued, they think, on their use of fossil fuels, which is pretty amazing. Now, part of it is there has been an economic slowdown, but they have also had such a huge adoption of electric vehicles that has led to this plateauing on the use of fossil fuels. So this is pretty amazing, and this has never happened before in history for a developing country to have a plateau in its use of fossil fuels, or this main energy source, which is what we use right now. So this is pretty fantastic. And this, I love this graph. So this is really amazing. This is about what is happening in the global south versus the global north. And ladies and gentlemen, this is all about renewables. So as you can see, the adoption of clean energy is happening twice as fast in the global south as it is in the global north. And one of the part of it is sort of a no-brainer. It's cheap, it's easy to install, but also the global south has 70% of the world's potential when it comes to wind and solar. So you've got Africa here, you've got South Asia, Southeast Asia, and you've got Latin America. And they are also China having this unprecedented sort of historic plateau of fossil fuels. These guys are having this unprecedented transition, this sort of fast transition to this cheap energy source that is really helping them develop. And it's really amazing because there are 700 million people in the world who don't have access to electricity. Let me repeat that one more time. 700 million people without electricity.
Where mostly, do we know?
Well, so these are in the, places in the global south. And then unfortunately, it's the poorest countries in the global south, because the global south, it is the countries that are rich. But for one example, so in 2011, Tanzania, only 11% of people in Tanzania had electricity. And now 46% of people in Tanzania, almost half the population. And that is because of renewables. So you've sort of got a perfect setup there. You've got all this potential for renewables. And then you've also got capital. The people who want to invest money, they see this potential and how quickly you'll get a return on your investment. And what I think is interesting is, we've got the IPCC sort of squabbling. We talk about this all the time. They have a COP, and the developed world, starts reneging on the promises that they've made to developing world, to the global south. We're going to give you this money to transition. We're going to help you with climate change. Well, now the money is, finding where they're going to get the most bang for their buck. And I think it was a decade ago, it was about 50-50, money going into fossil fuel projects and money going into renewables. And now 7 times the amount of money that's being put into fossil fuel projects is going into renewables in this part of the world. And it makes sense. They don't have their own fossil fuels, so everything was having to be imported. But why do that when you have all the sun and wind? And the other thing that's amazing, so China, I have to say thank you, China, because of their production. I mean, they're not the only place that's producing solar panels, but solar panels went down in price in 2024, 35%. When you take photos from satellites, when you look down on Pakistan, practically every roof has a solar panel on it. And I think we've had these before on the show, where we've got a grass hut in a sub-Saharan African country, and it's got a solar panel slapped on the roof. There's your, charging your cell phone. There's your, your small local business.
When you look at our society and how we have this infrastructure for doing power the old way, and corporations don't want to be, have the expense of trying to switch over to everything new. And we always find reasons why it's not good, because, that we can't recycle solar panels, or this is bad or that's bad. When you look at countries like this, or area regions, I should say, like this, where not many people have power, and so there's not a lot of infrastructure already built, it's kind of like a blank slate to start from scratch in the new best way.
Yes, and to provide yourselves with an electricity source that isn't spewing particulate pollution into your atmosphere and poisoning you and giving you all these terrible diseases. So I think to bypass a coal-fired power plant, this is it's a win-win situation. And, look, there are 8 sub-Saharan African countries that are producing twice the amount of solar that the US is. And this is a thing I've said quite a few times on the show, ding dong, wake up, America, because you don't want to be left behind with this. This renewable transition is happening, Mr. Trump, whether you like it and believe in it or not. And so to pull back, IRA money from red states, who are going to be very upset with you if you decide you're going to defund, their solar or wind projects that they're relying on and have already created jobs. You're taking us backwards in time and technology. You're going analog, old school. You're taking away jobs, from your constituents and from people a lot of people who voted for you. You're going to make yourself super unpopular, and it's not going to make America great again. It's going to put us in second position. All these other countries are, transitioning. I mean, in the global south, it's sort of at breakneck speed right now. It's happening so quickly. And, these are people who, I think, I don't know if I already said this on the show, but they use 5 times less energy than people from the global north. So, they need the electricity, and they now have the means, and they're getting the capital to be able to do it. And it's just sort of a no-brainer. It's kind of dovetailing perfectly for them, that they don't have all these horribly polluting power plants, and they're just going to go straight to solar. I mean, imagine if we could do that.
The thing that strikes me, though, is that even though I feel like we may have to press pause on the next 4 years for environmental regulations with the Trump administration, you see the EPA in crisis, people being fired at the EPA that are doing really good work, that are moving America forward. You see the whole plastic straw regulation thing. That's just a sign of all the other problems. And so maybe America's pushing pause, but what you just showed me is that no one else is, that most of the other countries in the world are moving full steam ahead with things that are good for the world. And that gives me hope.
Yeah, because the thing is, yes, it's like I say, it's happening whether you like it or not. This is technology. This is where we're headed. And it's sort of a little bit of a wake-up call, I think, for the US. Like, don't rest on your laurels with this stuff, or don't try to take us backwards, because this isn't where the world is going. And, I love that quote, it's not governments that lead. It's, it's business, it's corporations, it's the next, new thing, and governments follow. There's innovation, and there's where business and money, where's the capital goes. And then, government's like, oh yeah, that's, we need to be going in that direction too. So I just think it's a little, it's not far-sighted, to be caught flat-footed on this stuff, because, this is happening. And I think also, Kim, when I talk about it happening on a local level, in Africa, they don't have to wait for the UN, for the IPCC countries to all say, oh, yes, we're going to help fund you. It's going to get, funded anyway. It's what's happening here in the US as well. That the solar site that we talked about a couple of weeks ago that's happening in New York State, that's not going to stop because of, a Trump presidency. That is going to be built out, and that is going to power, I think, what was it, 120,000 homes. By 2030, New York is going to be on clean electricity for their households. These things are going to happen. So, you can fight progress or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we still have all this crap in the air that we're breathing, and what to do.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I really love this story. I mean, it's awful when you hear scientists say, okay, guess what, everybody? It's not that you're not exercising enough. It's not that you have bad genetics. It's corporate greed and what they're doing to change scientific results on research that says that, the toxic product that they make isn't toxic. But they're actually now saying, what we're dying of, metabolic disorders, cancer, heart disease, those are because of the toxics, the toxic chemicals that we are being exposed to in our environment. And here, look, kids playing soccer, with their adult coaches, and there's an oil refinery behind them. This just shouldn't happen. Those people are all breathing in particulate pollution, which is one of the big killers. It kills 9 million people globally a year. And this is not okay. And so I love this, that UCSF now has this new center, and it's called To End Corporate Harm. Because when you really look at what plastics, chemicals, fossil fuels, all the things that, pesticides, insecticides, that are on our food, that are in our atmosphere, that we're breathing, and they're trying to tell us, they call it the corporate funding effect. So when a corporation does some research into, say, a chemical that they produce, miraculously, they find that it's not actually that harmful. And then what these scientists are saying is, we went in and we looked at the other research that non-biased scientists were doing, and we found that toxic, that really was a toxicant. It really was incredibly harmful to human health. And at UCSF in the library, they have all the documents from the 1994 case against big tobacco, where big tobacco had been legislatively or legally obfuscating the harm that it was doing to us for so long. They knew that, smoking caused cancer. And then all these other corporations, particularly fossil fuel corporations, have taken, pages out of that playbook and done the same things. Fossil fuel isn't dangerous. Methane and natural, we call it natural gas, even though it's 27, times stronger than CO2 as a climate change, as a greenhouse gas. So what they're now showing is, opioids, drugs, plastics, the chemicals in food, all of these things are harming us. And every pill that we take to sort of, try and, remedy the nasty thing that, got in us, like me, my cytogenetics changing, and suddenly I had multiple myeloma cancer. And now I hear of, 24-year-olds with multiple myeloma cancer. It's our white blood cells went crazy. I didn't start out like that. My genetics changed. And, I've said this a million times on the show, it used to be men in their 70s who'd worked in oil refineries who got this cancer. Well, now everyone's getting this cancer. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's ghastly. So the fact that we, and hopefully they won't lose their funding, because I love this center. I love that the center is saying, look, corporate greed and their profit and this funding effect when they research something. This is my favorite on this, and I'm really sorry to anyone who really loves dark chocolate and really got the memo about how great dark chocolate was for you. High cocoa content has this high antioxidant, ratio in it. Well, who funded that research? Do you know, Kim? Do you know who funded the research that told us that dark chocolate was good for us?
I'll take a stab in the dark. Chocolate companies?
Yeah, See's Candy, and their sales of 70% plus, cocoa chocolate, it just went through the roof. And then I just happened to be on.
It's full of mercury, right? It's full of mercury and chemicals.
Well, the thing about cocoa is that it's a great antioxidant but it's a great antioxidant when it's raw, not when it's been put in a great big vat and heated up and turned into chocolate. It loses its antioxidant powers. So everyone has been gobbling, me included. I was like, oh, I love dark chocolate. I can't get enough of this stuff. It's good for me. Thank you.
Yeah, wine is great for you too. A little wine, little dark chocolate. We're good to go for the night.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing, and it's interesting because I'm married to someone who's really skeptical of research and statistics, and he always asks me, well, what's the the statistical group that they're using for that information? And this is the thing, you really do have to look, what's the statistical group, who's funding the research, because the results of the research really get influenced by who's paying the bill for it.
And has it been peer reviewed and all of these things that, we see a headline because the headline is sexy. We're attracted to it, and we don't really understand the underlying science behind what's happening and what's being reported.
Yeah, and look, it's really hard, I think, for the average person, and how much time we have when we're reading the news to really sort of go deeper. So that's why I'm giving you the bad news about the chocolate. Sorry, I am really I apologize. I know you're going to hate me for a minute, guys, but remember that I love you, and that's why I'm telling you this. I have your best interests at heart. But I think the center looking into what corporations are doing and how that greed and their profit margins are just so much more important to them than our health. And, this is not okay. We can't keep living like this. So,
Well, I have to tell you that this happened right here in the Bay Area. Just last week, there was a fire at one of the oil refineries in the East Bay. And it's an area where there's a lot of people living around. And they said, oh, close your windows, stay inside, shelter in place for a while. And then the next day it was like, you're fine. Everything's fine. We're all back to normal. And then a few days later comes more information about, no, it wasn't really fine. That, there were some things in the air that were actually pretty dangerous. And while they did get blown away or scattered around wherever they went, and they weren't concentrated in that area for a long time, it wasn't as okay as we were all led to believe. And they do this over and over again. And I don't know if it's because they don't want people to panic or what, but I'm very excited about this new center at UCSF to end corporate harm. And I worry, though, that if UCSF is competing for federal dollars to fund scientific research, that the words end corporate harm aren't going to be looked upon favorably by the Trump administration. And that could mean end that new center to end corporate harm, or you get no money.
Yes, I hear you on that. And it definitely is a concern. Hopefully some environmental hero, billionaire, eco person like Bloomberg will come in and, foot the bill of the research, or there'll be, an independent center that's not, part of a public university. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. These corporations have got such a stronghold, on everything. But we'll see. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Let's remain optimistic for right now, and hopefully they'll get lots of information out before anything negative
Belinda
happens.
Waymouth, I love you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for the baby turtles and the good and the bad information. We needed it all.
Yeah, the baby turtles are super cute. I'll put them up on Blue Sky so you can watch that video to your heart's content, everyone, okay?
Beautiful. Thank you, Belinda. Bye.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
More. It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, very impressive. I loved it. Kim did a great job with that. Yeah. Very well done, Kim.
Thanks. We had a great conversation. We had fun together.
You did.
The Mark Thompson Show.
In our last minute, I will relate to you a couple of emails that have come in, and it's the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. This from Anthony. David K. Johnston, Mark, has predicted that Trump would fire generals and admirals not loyal to him and replace them with junior officers of lower ranks not qualified for the positions they are appointed to. This is now a fact with the naming of Air Force Lieutenant General Dan Kane as chairman of the Joint Chiefs. As Trump moves to politicize the U.S. military with his recent purge, you will hear his defenders claim that President Obama did the same thing. Then he actually posts a link to refute that claim And he says he's a KGO listener from the 1980s. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Anthony. That's
cool.
That's years of distinguished service, sir. So well done. Yeah. And then from Noe Marie came this piece that we referenced yesterday. And Noe Marie, a former colleague of ours at KGO, she has a website that is making your voice that you then express to leadership in Congress easier to get out. The website is 5calls.org, and Albert has it there. A lot of people say, what can I do? You should call your legislator. If you have a problem with what's going on in Washington, the federal government, or in your state, you should be in touch with your legislator. Remember, they typically don't get a lot of calls. Now they're getting a lot. And something else I mentioned to you the other day, and I'll just reiterate it. Typically, GOP voters are far more vocal in terms of making those calls and expressing themselves than are Democrats. So you should at least step up your game if you're a Democrat or independent, whatever you consider yourself. But anyway, usually the calls are overwhelmingly GOP, 8-1. But now they are getting some serious ringing off the hook from those who are angry about what's going on in Washington. Anyway, there is a photo of the app, and the first move is that you enter your zip code, and then you choose from an issue that you want to call in on. And then they provide each senator or representative's office number with a script. And once you finish the call, she says, she goes to the screen with the results of who was calling, etc. On my first call to John Garamendi on the date of this photo, I'm reading directly from her email, I spoke to someone in his office. I stated I was calling with comment, and she said she could take that comment. I carefully read the script, which included asking for subpoenas for Elon Musk and Doge, making public statement, etc. On my second two calls, she says, I reached voicemails and left my message on a voicemail. Alex Padilla only had a short amount of time allotted for that voicemail relative to the script, so it cut me off. There was an option to re-record, which I took. I spoke with a little more pep the second time and got through everything, but my intended thank you for your time on this matter didn't get through. Anyway, this is something that you should avail yourself of. And if you want to make your voice heard, you can literally make it heard through 5calls.org. We have it up for you
It's a
now.
great tool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. Good stuff. Well, I'd like to continue, but I can't.
Really? What's stopping you today?
I have to make way for other things, Kim.
Oh,
I felt as though, honestly, Matt, you saw an okay offering. I mean, I feel a little pressure with Matt here, the newest member of our crew. I kind of really wanted to step up with him. You know, felt we got a couple of strategic drops in. We had a couple of technical issues. That's very much on brand for us.
Yep.
Apart from that, anything? Kim, Albert? Do you have a warning of any kind for Matt?
He's nice.
Is that from me or Kim?
Yeah, they'd be different warnings, actually, come to think of it. You'd have a different warning. I think generally, Albert, you're treated with the appropriate scorn and abuse on this show that you deserve. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah. It's
Albert, thank you.
Yeah.
It's appropriate.
Yeah. So when Albert's not here, Matt can step up. And Kim, frankly, Matt, you didn't hear. I'm just realizing the story of how she rescued her son from the unforgiving surf off of Monterey Coast. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
When are you back tomorrow, Matt, or not? I forget. Yeah.
Matt, you are muted, by the way.
You're muted, but Matt, are you just?
I'm
are you back
tomorrow? I think through Friday, I believe.
Great. So we will have an opportunity to work that story in.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. Kim still has she's still haunted by the images. But it does have a happy Hollywood ending.
You're not wrong. Yeah, it does have a happy ending. Thank goodness.
So that's the good part. So Kim Possible saves the day again, says B.A. Ware. Yes, indeed. We love our Kim. Speaking of that, Kim has a show of her own. It's called the After Party Live. It goes down right now on the After Party Live channel. There's no politics. It's all fun, weird, quirk. It's a hoedown. It's a brodown. You should check it out sometime.
Just click subscribe. Come on over.
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Exactly. She does it live. It's called the After Party Live. Thank you, everybody who supports our show in all the ways that you do. Checking out our sponsors and, checking out our Patreon and our PayPal. Tomorrow, I may do my orgy of thanks. Finally, I've been promising it for a while. My orgy of thanks is how grateful we are to all of our Patreon and PayPal supporters. I'll call it not by name, but we post everybody's name at the end of this show every day because you guys do make it happen. So thank you. After Party Live is next.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining us. We're out of time.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.